Hi, we're back again. In my last two video presentations, I spoke about Ezra's eagle and the prophetic interpretation provided in the book of 2 Esdras. Today we'll talk a little bit about the possible implications of this prophecy for the days in which we now live. Some of you may have already identified some of the clues from the dream to identify a nation that might closely fit with the dream. Some people, reading that the eagle represents the same nation as the final beast from Daniel's dream, might think that the eagle represents ancient Rome, because the people have been saying for years that, it was Nebuchadnezzar and the Greek Empire, and that the fourth one was the Romans. People have said that for a long time. And to be sure, Jesus, the Messiah of Christianity, did appear during the Roman Empire, but it didn't end within two emperors of when Jesus was there, but Rome did eventually burn while Nero played his violin, or so they say, and so there may be every other references in the dream that might make people conclude that the eagle refers to other countries, including even Russia, which at one point was represented by a flag that had a three-headed eagle on it. So there's lots of different ways that you could interpret this, and that you might say, well, I think it was this, or I think it was that. And I'd love to hear what you think, and I'm going to tell you a little bit here about what I think. Many of the other details regarding the long and the short feathers and the sequencing thereof, with leaders taking turns being in charge, as well as the voice coming from the body of the eagle rather than the heads, leads me to think that the nation being described as being different from all the others that preceded it might be characterized as being a democracy or a republic, rather than a monarchy. And that brings us to the possibility that it might represent what some have called the greatest nation on earth, the United States of America. Let's examine the evidence. So we're going to ask a series of questions and answers to help you see whether or not this might actually be a good interpretation. Question number 1. Has there been a series of leaders in the United States, the second of which was elected to serve for twice as long as any other, and after whom none would be permitted to serve as long? This is from 2 Esdras 11, 13 to 17. The answer, of course, is yes. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected to serve 4 four-year terms in office. He died 82 days into his 4th term, serving over 12 years, which was longer than any other U.S. president. Near the end of the 1944 presidential election, FDR's opponent, Thomas Dewey, announced his support of a constitutional amendment to limit presidents to 2 terms. According to Dewey, quote, 4 terms or 16 years, parentheses, a direct reference to the president's tenure in office 4 years hence, close parentheses, is the most dangerous threat to our freedom ever proposed, unquote. The 22nd Amendment, limiting presidents to 2 terms, was then passed by Congress in 1947, before FDR's final term would have ended, had he survived, and it was ratified by the states in 1951. So the voice of Thomas Dewey and the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution satisfies this reference to the voice coming to that particular leader and telling him that nobody else would be able to serve as long as he did. Okay? So that's one clue. So that was the second in the series. So if FDR was the second in the series, then the first in the series would have been Herbert Hoover, who was right before him. So the next question is, since Herbert Hoover, the president who preceded FDR, took office in 1929, have there been 2 presidents whose time could be described as small and short? If so, did their times in office conclude in what could be described as approaching the middle time of the period of the dream? This is a reference to 2 Esdras 12, 19 to 21. Okay, which says that will be the case. So the answer is, of course, yes, there have been 2 presidents since January 20th of 1929 who served for less than a full 4-year term. All of the others since Hoover have completed 1 or more 4-year terms of office. So John F. Kennedy served from 1961 until his assassination in 1963, a period of less than 3 years, and Gerald R. Ford served from 1974 until 1977, finishing the unexpired term of Richard M. Nixon, who resigned 1 year into his second term. The 4-year term of office can thus be used to differentiate between the time in office for a long feather versus a short feather, and perhaps between the large head and the small heads as well. Ford finished his 48 years. Ford finished his term 48 years from the time that Hoover began his term. 44 years have elapsed since Ford's term ended, but the time period of the dream has not yet ended. So if Ford's term ended precisely at the middle point of the period in question, then it appears that we will have about 4 more years from 2021 before the time period ends. That would be a total of 96 years, with 48 being the midpoint. Now, if the midpoint actually occurred after January 20th, 1977, then we may have a bit more than 4 years before the end of the time depicted in the dream. Okay? Next question. If this dream describes the United States of America, who was the last of the presidents who would have been represented as a large feather? The initial string of 14 presidents represented by 12 large and 2 small feathers would include the following presidents in order: Hoover, Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Clinton, George W. Bush, and Obama. Even though most of these men have died at this time, there's still a few left, the dream does not describe them as dying or being slain, but rather as simply appearing no more. Okay, so the last of the large feathers would have been President Obama. Next question, which presidents in the succession of leaders would be represented by the heads of the eagle? This is from 2 Ezra 12, 22 through 28. The first eagle to serve as president, the first eagle head to serve as president, is the large one between the 2 small heads. This would correspond to President Trump. Trump served for 1 4-year term, which would qualify him as a large feather, were it not for the fact that all the large feathers were already accounted for, once Obama finished his first full term. And so, the next full-term president, President Trump, seems to be logically counting as the, quote, large head. On a side note, please do not accuse me of comparing President Trump to a big head, okay? That inference was made by the creator of Ezra's dream, okay? Following the large head, President Trump, we now have the first of 2 small heads, which would line up to President Biden. If my assertion that the small heads are similar to small feathers who will serve for less than a full term, then the logical conclusion would be that perhaps President Biden might not finish his full 4-year term of office, and he might be followed in office by Vice President Harris, or whoever might be next in the line of succession if President Biden passes away, or is impeached, or is removed using the 25th Amendment for being unable to fill his responsibilities, for example, if he were to have a stroke or something like that and was no longer capable of serving. Okay? Now, next question. The eagle heads are described as dying in bed or being slain by the sword. How is this different than the manner in which the feathers appear no more? Well, based upon what happened at the end of President Trump's term of office, it appears that President Trump was experiencing significant emotional trauma at having to face the real or contrived results of the election. I'm not taking sides here about the results and whether the election was stolen or not, but it is evident from the statements of persons within the president's inner circle, as well as the media, that he was in pain, as described in 2 Ezra 12:26. Given the historical precedents for transitions of power at the time of Ezra, where kings stayed in power until they died, or were killed, or were taken captive by a foreign power, saying that he died in his bed, yet in pain, might be a way of saying that he completed his term of office, but was not happy about the election results. As far as the 2 small heads being slain by the sword, this might be an indication that one or both of them might actually be assassinated, or perhaps that Actions such as impeachment or the 25th Amendment will be taken to forcibly remove them from office prior to the end of their term. This differs from the manner in which the feathers ended their terms by what might be described as a peaceful transition of power, wherein the outgoing president acknowledges the results of an election and facilitates a smooth and peaceful transition from one administration to the next. Okay? Next question. What are we to make of the 4 feathers that were set up but did not rule? These 4 feathers were reserved for a time approaching the end. The first of the 4 contended for the presidency before the awakening of the eagle's heads. But after the last of the 12 large feathers stood up and ruled, but after the last of the 12 large feathers stood up and rules. This points to the election of 2012, approaching the end of Obama's first term. The dream states that the second of these 2 feathers was away sooner than the first. Maybe it's just a bad play on words, but I'm a dad and I can make bad dad jokes. But the primary Republican candidates to Obama included Mitt Romney, Rick Santorum, Ron Paul, and Newt Gingrich. Of these 4 candidates, Romney won the Republican nomination and Rick Santorum finished second. Second, get it? The second? Effectively ending his campaign months before the presidential election. The candidate who was second, Santorum, was away sooner than the candidate who came in first, Romney. Okay? The second 2 of the 4 were described as being eaten by the large head. In this case, the feathers could represent the candidates of the 2016 election. Hillary Clinton could indeed be described as being set up to win in 2016. She had the political credentials necessary to win. She led in the polls and even won the popular vote. But President Trump won the electoral vote. I would opine that the second of the last 2 small feathers on the wing might have been Bernie Sanders, who was also defeated in 2016, but I'm open to other possible explanations. So this is where I think we are in terms of Ezra's eagle and its application to the United States of America. We are living in the administration of the first of the 2 small heads of the eagle. Even the second of the 2 small heads might be in office, currently serving as the vice president. So far, I have talked about the comparison of Ezra's dream of the eagle to the history of the United States from 1929 to the present time in 2021, a period of just over 92 years. The rest of the dream lies in what we would call the future. If the dream does represent the United States, then the remainder of the dream would take place in what we would call our future. The final scenes of the dream include comparatively rapid transitions between the current and the next 3 presidential administrations, and divine intervention in the course of our history. I will leave it to you to consider the implications of what Ezra wrote, the comparisons to our national history, and what it means for you and your family. Please feel free to leave your comments and ideas in the comments section. That's all for now. That's my opinion, and it's like anybody else's opinion. We all have them, and I would love to hear what yours might be. If you have either the same one or a different one, please go ahead and write in the comments and let me know. Thank you. Have a good day.